All right, so let's take a look. Today we're going to be multiplying and dividing. We call this rational expression. Okay, rational basically means fractions. Okay, but it's not going to be a simple fraction as just a number over another number. And we're algebra 2, so we're going to leave that for pre-algebra, just simple fractions. We're going to be dealing with expressions like the ones you see on the screen, right? We talked about factoring yesterday. Remember in our notes, we did questions 1 through 6 on how to factor. So for today, I am going to say after factoring, we get this, right? I'm not gonna show you guys the steps on how to factor it. Make sure you guys watch the other video if necessary. Contact me if you need help. But again, we talked about factoring yesterday. So let's take a look at multiplication. Multiplication is easier than division. So we're going to multiply first. Now, my first fraction, we can see in question number 1, my first fraction, not going to do anything to my fraction. I have a 1 over a minus 1. Now I'm going to multiply this. Now my second fraction, I will simplify first. I will factor first. Again, we talk about factoring. Yesterday in questions 1 and 2, we talk about how do we factor when the first number is a 1. So the top fraction is kind of like questions 1 and 2 from our notes. So a squared minus 18a plus 81. Now where we're going to factor this, we end up getting a minus 9 squared. So I'm literally going to write my a minus 9 twice. Remember we did like a X thing, I call it the diamond method. And again, if you need help, you need to review, watch that video, contact me or something. But when you factor the top, you get an a minus 9 twice. The bottom is an a minus 9. Okay. Some of you might be a little lost right now. In case I lost you, this thing that I highlighted, a squared minus 18a plus 81, when I factor it, I get a minus 9 twice. Okay, that's where that came from. Again, I factor that. Now, when we're multiplying in fractions, we can cancel common factors. Okay, factors are basically things that we multiplied. I'm going to cancel common factors. Now, for common factors to be canceled, the same factor has to be on top and the bottom of either the same fraction or different fractions. As an example, I see an a minus 9 and an a minus 9. That cancels out. Okay. In this case, we saw them on the same fraction, but they don't have to be in the same fraction. I could have gotten from different fractions. All the rule says, as long as it is one of the factors that I cancel is on top and the other one is at the bottom. It never says from the same fraction or different fractions. So now let's see. Now on the top, let me cancel this 1 over here. And now the reason why I'm canceling that 1 and I don't have it at the bottom is because in multiplication, we're multiplying. When you multiply by 1, really nothing happens, okay? So I'm not going to multiply by 1. I'm just going to ignore it. So I just cancel it out. So now on the top, I'm looking at leftovers, if we can say. On the top, I have an a minus 9. And at the bottom, I have an a minus 1. Now, some of you might be thinking, what about those a's? Can I cancel that a with the other a? In this case, no, okay? They have to cancel the whole factor. When there's a plus or minus, in this case, minus is on the top, a minus 9, I have to cancel the whole thing, not just part of it. You know, something, for example, 4 plus 7 over 4, I'm not just going to cancel the 4 and say, 11 divided by 4 is 7, right? That's not true. So that's why we don't just cancel part of it. So in this case, nothing else I can cancel. A minus 9 over a minus 1. That's it. Now let's take a look at question number 8. Let me factor it if possible, okay? So to begin with, on the first fraction, nothing I can do. I have an a plus 4 over 7. On the second fraction, when I take a look on the top, so let me highlight the top, I'm looking at that. Now, I see an 8a and a 64. I can divide both numbers by an 8, right? 8 and 64. But we don't just divide and get rid of the 8. Instead, let me write it out here. Let me write an 8. So I'm going to divide both by 8, and I'm going to do this parentheses. We're doing the distributive property backwards, okay? So each of those numbers, let me divide by 8, and I'm going to get a plus 8. Okay. Now let me focus at the bottom of that fraction. A squared plus 12a plus 32. Again, questions 1 and 2 from our notes. We saw this yesterday, how to factor. Now, right, two numbers that multiply equals 32, but when I add them is equal to 12. I'm looking at a plus 4 and a plus 8. Right, I factor the bottom of that fraction. And now the fun part. Let me cancel things out. But remember, to cancel them out, it has to cancel the top and the bottom, right? Something from the top, something from the bottom has to be identical. It could be from the same fraction or different fractions. So I see, for example, this a plus 8 with this a plus 8. They cancel out. It's from the same fraction, but one on the top, one at the bottom. And then this a plus 4 with this a plus 4. They are from different fractions, but that's okay, as long as I cancel something from the top and the bottom, identical. So my leftovers, let's see what I have left. I have an 8 over 7. Okay. Now that's how we multiplied. Now for division, we learned back in the days when we were like in algebra 1 or pre-algebra, we learned that division of a fraction of fractions, we change it to times the reciprocal of the second fraction. Okay, so that means that I'm gonna flip the second fraction. So let me write this thing out first. Let me rearrange the top of my first fraction. I want this to be in order, the exponents to be in order. So I have a negative x squared plus x plus 2. Okay, I'm gonna have this, and then at the bottom here, I have an x squared minus x minus 2 times, right? I want to change this to multiplication. I know it's division, but I'm going to switch it to multiplication, and then the reciprocal of the second fraction. Reciprocal means I'm going to flip it. So it's going to be x minus 5 over 10x. Notice I flipped the second fraction, right? So division, we switch it to times, and then the reciprocal of the second fraction. Now, question number 9 on the top. We don't really like negatives in front of our trinomials. So let me factor a -1 first. So I have a -1. So I'm gonna do the distributive property backwards. So that gives me x squared minus x minus 2. Okay. So now let me factor. Okay, so I have a -1 on the front. Now x squared minus x minus 2. Again, we learned how to factor yesterday. So that is x minus 2, x plus 1. Remember, I was looking at two numbers that multiplied equals -2, but when I add them is equal to -1, so that's fine. Now the bottom of the fraction, I'm looking at this, x squared minus x minus 2. Two numbers that multiplied equals -2, added equals -1. So I'm going to have x minus 2, x plus 1. Okay. And times my second fraction, the top, nothing I can do. X minus 5. The bottom, 10x, nothing I can do. Okay, let me cancel common factors. So this x plus 1 with this x plus 1. This x minus 2 with this x minus 2. Nothing else I can factor out. Now, this -1 at the very beginning, I'm not just going to ignore it. right? Earlier, I did ignore a 1 because when you multiply by 1, nothing happens. But this one, in this case, has a negative sign. So let me put a -1. I'm multiplying a -1 with x minus 5. I'm looking at my leftovers, right? Everything that I was not able to cancel. And then we ask ourselves, is there anything else I can factor? This case, nothing. However, let me multiply the top. Right, let me multiply the top because I don't want to have a -1 in the parentheses. Let me distribute the -1. So that gives me negative x plus 5 over 10x. Okay, last example for today. Let's take a look at question number 10. So as I mentioned, when we have division, I'm gonna change it to multiplication and reciprocal of the second fraction. So to begin with, I have 3n squared over n plus 9 times, change it to times, 7n plus 63 over 7n plus 21. Notice I flip the second fraction. All right, so let's factor if possible. So I look on the top of the first fraction. And I'm going to be working my first fraction. 3n squared, nothing I can do. So let me just write 3 times n squared. Let's take a look at the bottom of the fraction. N plus 9, nothing I can do. So let me just write n plus 9 times. Now the second fraction. Let me focus on the top. Seems like I can divide both numbers by 7, right? So let me do the distributive property backwards. So it seems like I can divide both by 7. Let me put my parentheses, each of those numbers divided by 7, so I get n plus 9, right? 1n plus 9. I divided each by 7. Now let's take a look at the bottom. You highlight it. 7n plus 21. It seems like I can divide each by 7 as well. Let me open my parentheses. Let me divide each of those numbers by 7. So I get n plus 3. Okay, let me cancel common factors. Let's see what we can cancel. This 7 with this 7, they go away. This n plus 9 with this n plus 9, they cancel out. So my leftovers, let me combine my leftovers. On the top, I have a 3n squared. At the bottom, I have an n plus 3. Nothing else I can cancel out. So that's pretty much it.